have a look. Thanks, Kerry. Hopefully, people will have had a chance to have a look at the Curran Fellowship if you've not been aware of it previously, and might have specific questions, particularly if you're in the process of beginning drafting or working on your own application. So I'll make a start. I think we're sort of pushing the numbers up now. And I'm going to introduce you to the first person on our panel, who's Candace Ward, who has been a recipient of the Curran Fellowship. So, Candice, can I hand over to you, please?
Thanks so much, and thanks to Allison and the other Digi events organizers. This is such an amazing opportunity and a kind of just a testament to the RSVP community and the support system that they offer. Just community. This is a real community. I've been so impressed since joining in 2017, which hasn't been all that long ago, but it's one of the most welcoming, supported communities I've ever had the pleasure to be part of. So thank you for that. I was just going to um, talk about a few things that I've struggled with myself as an applicant to these various funding opportunities, and how I kind of try to resolve the anxiety involved with them. And I know that the deadlines have shifted a tiny bit, and so that the portal is open, has been, I think, since uh, when I can't remember, but the application deadline is October 15th. Is that, yes. So yeah, about a month and change to work through. And so my primary tips were doing groundwork, which if you're already in the process, you've already been doing the kind of the groundwork that you need to lay before you submit that application. And I kind of had the four areas of groundwork. And again, you may already be well on the way with this. And the first bit is just a careful read and a mulling over of the information that is available on the website. I have to say that Curran, the information from the instructions to the overview is one of the most helpful, um, sites that I've encountered with various opportunities for funding. A lot of times granting agencies will just toss something out there, but there's real helpful information on the website about the aim of the program, what kind of uses the funds should be directed toward, even kind of hints at some of the kinds of language that you want to build into the application narrative. So, just taking the time to really sit with that overview and that information. Um, One of the another kind of bit of groundwork, of course, and again, apologies if you're already well on your way with this, is that when you're identifying where you want to go, what archives you want to be engaging with, that you have a full sense of the offerings. I mean, without being there in person, that's one of the beauties of archival research, is those are those accidental finds, when you're actually in the archive and you have just the sheer joy of coming across something that you hadn't expected before. Um, but as you're writing the application, to demonstrate that you have reached out to the archives, that you have been in conversation with a librarian, with an archivist, both in terms of explaining your project to them, which gives you a chance to rehearse, what you want to do. But the fact that they would then be able to let you know that, oh no, you can't come at this time of the year because we're doing renovation work and the library will be closed. So there's a, really pragmatic aspect to building those relationships early, and that you can then, as I said, point to that in the application itself. You know, I have been in contact with X, Y. I know this is there, so that you demonstrate to the evaluators that you are indeed, if you get that funding, you're ready to go. You know where you're going, who you're going to talk with, and you've got a real launch pad. Um, the other bit of groundwork was, of course, the letter writer, reaching out to someone who is familiar with your work, who knows about the project, hopefully that knows something about the field of periodical studies and can speak to your ability to carry out that, you know, the task that you've set that you want to achieve while you're in the archives. I've had, you know, the great good fortune to have really strong colleagues who know the field, and who give my application draft a really nice read, and can give me feedback at that kind of earlier stage. So to be thoughtful about who you ask for a letter, um, that's a really important thing. And then I'll just close with, as a very pragmatic part of what I do is I go into the information, that the section on the application requirements. In the first few sentences, it says the narrative should do X, Y, Z, and that X, Y, and Z, that little list of tasks, that is my outline for the whole application. I use those items as my subheads in the application, and it keeps it, you know, I hope focused. It gives you that kind of skeleton outline that you then, you know, put in, and that helps you achieve the balance of, you know, the groundwork you've laid, the work you're going to accomplish, and why it's important, and why it should appeal to the evaluators at RSVP. And I know I've probably gone over, so I'll stop.
No, that was perfect timing. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jim Mussell now, who will segue and build on some of what Candice has said as a recipient of the Curran. But Jim then will also give us some information from the other side, which is the sort of committee that will be reviewing those. So I'll hand over to Jim now.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks everybody for inviting me to speak here. I've held two current fellowships, one in 2016 and one in 2023, and I served on the committee in 2019, 2020. So I've seen it from both sides. And I thought what I'd do in my little 5 minutes is just pick out some of the key terms that describe the projects. I do want to anticipate what Michael might do in terms of evaluation and the criteria in a bit, but I'd maybe just pick out some of the key terms and talk about how I thought about those, but on as an applicant and as an evaluator. Now, I'm in a, but before I do that, though, I just want to say a bit about the fellowships as a whole. I'm quite privileged, and I'm in a research university that still has research funding. So we get at the moment £1,000 a year individually, and I say at the moment because we're having those conversations. So I can, and I'm in Leeds, so I'm within 3 hours of at least two national libraries and three copy like the Oxford, Cambridge, London, and Edinburgh are all within easy reach, and I've got a very good research library on campus as well. So for me, the current gives me an opportunity to go further afield and do sustained research in archives that I couldn't otherwise get to. And so for me, the two times that I've applied for it have been to look at discrete collections which are associated with a particular project that I'm doing at the moment. So the first one was to look at the William Frederick Poole archive in the Newberry Library in Chicago. And then the most recent one was to look at the records of the Linotype Company, which are at the University of Delaware. So it's the perfect amount of money to do sustained research research. But it's also a kind of awkward amount of money because you can't really apply for these sorts of sums through other funding bodies. So the Curran Fellowship really hits a sweet spot. It allows you to do the kinds of research that I think we want to do, work on primary resources. And it's one of the few funding opportunities to do that, to get $6,000, which is enough to go somewhere, spend some time looking at primary materials, and then kind of work them up later. So it's a really, really valuable opportunity. Well, my key piece of advice is obvious, read the guidance, but I want to pick out a few things from them. So one of the things we say is that the grant supports work on primary sources, regardless of whether they appear in print, manuscript, or digital facsimile. This means we're encouraging people to work on primary sources, archival materials in the first instance, and to think about newspapers and periodicals as objects of study rather than see them as resources to mine to tell other stories about the period. So, and that's kind of periodical studies 101, but we're a research organization on periodicals, and so we want people to take them as the object of study. So make sure when you apply, you bring that out in your application, that you're working on periodicals or some aspect of periodical culture. Because when we talk about archives and primary sources, it doesn't have to be the journals. It could be anything connected to periodical cultures. It could be readers, it could be printers, editors, publishers, contributors. Periodicals are entwined in people's lives in rich and complicated ways. So be attuned to that too. I just want to say too that the digital facsimiles part of this is important. When we think about primary sources broadly here, and primary sources could be digitized collections. And so if you need a fellowship to go to a library that has access to databases that you don't have, that's a valid use of a Curran fellowship. It's a travel and research award. We say that clearly. I think the travel bit's probably less important than the research bit, but you need to make the case for why you need that fellowship to do the work you want to do. So why should your project be funded now, right? So that's the kind of argument that you have to make. Why is it important to fund me to go and do this research right now in the context of the project that I want to do? The terms which we use to define the scope for applications are quite inclusive. So when we say British, we mean kind of British in the period, right? And that's a kind of expansive and fuzzy category. We don't restrict applications to work on British periodicals published in Britain. We don't restrict work to British periodicals read in Britain. These could be periodicals and newspapers that find themselves in all kinds of places around the world. So think about that category. The British category is important because it's kind of what we do as opposed to the Research Society of American periodicals say. But British itself is, we recognize it's a contested and complicated term. The 19th century is a long 19th century. We do give dates, but I think there's some sort of scope within that. I think you can make a case for why it's a 19th century project. And when we say newspapers and periodicals, we mean serials of all kinds. And we say that too in the guidelines. That it's not just newspapers and periodicals, it's also serial publishing. So you can think kind of broadly about that too. And we put probably the most important bit in bold in the guidelines. We say that you need to show in your applications that you advance scholarly understanding of the British periodical press in the long 19th century more generally. And that's in bold because it's important. We evaluate for quality and importance in the application. So attend to that bit that's in bold in the guidelines. You need to show how your work will advance scholarly understanding of the British periodical press in the long 19th century more broadly. And thanks, Carrie, for putting the guidelines. I probably should have shared my screen there. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jim. Perfect timing. I think that's really, really helpful from sort of both perspectives. And I think clarifying some of those terms, as you say, is really useful. Okay, so the final person on the panel today is Michael de Nie, and he has been an evaluator, I think, for the past two rounds, certainly for the past round. So I'd like to hand over to him if you'd like to pick up on some of the things that Jim's touched on, perhaps if you want to develop some of those as an evaluator. Thanks,
yeah,
Michael.
Sure. Yep. Sorry to interrupt. So yeah, we get many good proposals, but we're limited with money, right? We can't fund everything that's worthy of it. So what I did is I went through all the comments, all the rankings for the last two cycles, and saw what distinguishes, what sets apart a successful application. And there are three key elements to a successful Curran proposal: the work to be done, the significance, and the budget and travel plan. And I'll talk about each of those in turn, right? So work to be done, significance, budget, and travel plan. So work to be done, you need a clear research and work plan, be specific as possible, what materials you will use, where they are located, what you hope to accomplish, right? Why you chose them, why you need to travel to get to them, right? And as Candace noted here, it'd be helpful for you to show that you've contacted the archive, to that the archive will be available, that the materials are open, that they're not in conservation, for instance, right? So you know that it's going to be there, right? And of course, the last part of this is the deliverables. You should have a clear end product. What is coming out of this? If it's a book or whatever it is, or it's a digital project, but a clear deliverable. Okay. And the idea here is to demonstrate you've done your homework, and above all, to demonstrate the feasibility of the project. Okay. And then significance. This is in your narrative. In your significance, you need to demonstrate the originality of the project, right? And of course, most importantly, your contribution to the field of British periodical study, 19th century British periodical study, right? Why is there a need for this research? Just because it hasn't done before doesn't mean it's worth doing. And maybe there's a reason it hasn't been done before, right? So you need to make a case for it, right? And then on your budget and travel plan, be specific as possible in the travel plan, right? The more specific you can be, the better, because again, it'll set you off from the others, right? Exact locations, durations, dates, if possible, right? Itemized budget, if possible, including travel and accommodation costs. Don't just ask for $6,000, right? And the people who have an itemized thing and it's actually $5,980. Well, that shows that that's in a way that's better than just saying 6,000, right? It shows you've done the work, right? You're demonstrating feasibility, right? So there's the three key parts, I think, to any successful proposal. But then there was a couple tips as well. So the first tip is be realistic in your research and travel plan. Don't overpromise, right? So, in terms of how much you actually get done, that you're going to London for 3 weeks, don't say you're going to, don't overpromise, right? And also be realistic with your costs, right? If someone says, I'm going to use the $6,000 to go to India and to Singapore and to Johannesburg, well, you're not. That's not going to cover all that. So be realistic, okay? And again, as Jim said, it's 19th century periodicals, right? There is a hard end there, 1914, right? The long 19th century. It's okay if you go over a little bit, but if all of your periodicals start in the 1920s, you're immediately removed from contention, right? You're out of it right away, right? And again, also, as Jim said, periodicals history, right? This is not, content analysis is somewhere in between there, but it's not using periodicals as part of a larger study. I'm studying the literature of Dickens, and I'm going to look at these 3 newspapers. I'm studying, periodicals need to be the focus of the project, right? It's about periodicals, which is widely defined, but this isn't just, we'll get especially sometimes people who are looking for money for their dissertation. Of course, people are looking for the money for their dissertation research, but it's in something that's just not periodicals. It's like, there's like a periodicals chapter, right? Which is fine, but this is not necessarily the fellowship for that. With your letter writers, follow up to make sure they submit, right? If people are missing letters, it doesn't necessarily disqualify them. We can't hold, it's not always under the candidate's control, but it certainly doesn't help. Missing letters definitely doesn't help you. So, keep up with your letter writers, make sure they get it in. And it seems simple with everything, but multiple drafts, right? For clarity, multiple drafts for clarity, to get mistakes, to sharpen your argument, peer review, right? Especially if you know anyone who's gotten a Curran or similar fellowship, let them take a look at it, right? Get some eyes on it. You want to be as clean and polished as you can, because it is a stiff competition, right? We get a lot of entries. We can only usually do, 5 to 8 a year, and that's it. So you really need to make yourself stand out. And one way to make yourself, you don't want to stand out by being sloppy, or stand out by having errors and that kind of thing, right? You just want to be as clean and polished and as specific as possible. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much. I think they're all really useful tips. I think as well, and this might be something, Kari might be able to find the link. There is also on the RSVP YouTube a longer sort of discussion about the Curran Fellowship application from Russ Wyland, which I had a look at. He talks about project, proposal, person, plan, payoff. So for him, that's sort of the 5 Ps of getting through a Curran fellowship. So I recommend that as a useful resource to people as well. Thank you so much to our 3 speakers today. We've got plenty of time now to open up to specific questions. If people want to put their hands up, and thanks, Kari, the link for the Russ Wyland YouTube's there in the chat. If people want to raise their hands, then they can. People would rather drop that into questions into the chat, then I can put those to the panel as well. But over to our group now. Let's see if there's someone. No questions as yet. Sarah.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you all for donating some of your time to help us as we're putting these together. It really is nice to feel supported and seen, kind of coming at it from this side. My question kind of for all of you is if you could give any advice either from the writing side or the evaluation side about determining scope for this kind of project. Like as a writer, how did you go about trying to make sure that you were offering a hefty enough amount of work to deserve funding without, like Michael was saying, over promising? And then from the evaluator side, can you give a sense of how you go about determining if you feel like the proposal is giving a realistic amount of work for the money and time that's being asked for?
I think that is the hardest question. I mean, because that's the real nub of it, I think, is that is striking that balance of indicating that, again, that kind of groundwork that you've done this kind of groundwork. And I think Michael's point to like be realistic. If you started from the budget end, for example, that would, the realism of what $6,000 would do for you in terms of the amount of time, the cost of living in that space, and you can maybe use that to, okay, realistically, I'll be there for 5 weeks, but that really only means X number of working days in the archive. If I have an 8-hour day, can I have is it humanly possible to spend 8 hours a day in the archive? So, I mean, if you think about, maybe thinking about it from the end of, okay, I got the money. Now, realistically, what am I going to be able to do with that money? How much is humanly possible from that end? I mean, and if you sit down with say a digital version, like if there's an issue of a particular periodical or a newspaper that already has been digitized that you don't need to travel for, sit with it. Okay, how much time did looking at that, and then that would help you maybe really be more precise in laying out the scope.
I think those are good points, and I would just add another way to an additional thing you might do is identify some core text. There's this one run of this one magazine that I definitely need to see, but if I have time, these are the other ones, right? Just to show that we're not gonna send you there and you're gonna twiddle your thumbs for a week because you got it all done, right? But just say I'm gonna use every moment that I'm funded for productively, but this is the key part, but I have a backup plan. Again, showing that you've thought it through, showing that you're prepared.
Jim, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just for me, it was in both cases, I knew these archives existed. And so it was waiting for a moment when I had a research question to ask of them. So with the pool stuff, I was interested in indexing. And I was like, oh, I know this stuff's in Chicago to go and look at. So I wanted to do something with indexes and periodicals and knowledge in the period. And I knew this archive was there. So it was about connecting a collection and a question. And then, as Michael said, not promising too much to do with it because I didn't know what that could produce. So I was thinking I'll probably write it up as a journal article at some point, right? Which I did do. So it was that kind of thing, a collection and a question, and then thinking about what that might lead to.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you
I'm
all.
lucky to be one of the recipients of the very early sort of Curran fellowships. And I think one of the things that I would say, sort of building on what Jim's just said as well, is where the research can take you. So I had a collection, I had a question, and a lot of material. So basically, I set the Curran fellowship up as a pilot. As with this, I'll be able to work with this amount, but this could then lead to these other projects as well. So I think sometimes as well showing not just the maybe immediate deliverable, such as a journal article, but also where then maybe you could say from this I could build into a Linda Peterson, a British Academy, a wherever. I think also where it's going was some of the feedback that I got that might be useful for people to think about as well. So collection, question, future, potentially. Prithi?
Hi, I wanted to just say a couple of things, and I might need to go in a minute, so it's not a question so much as just I wanted to build in a few things. One, to Michael's last point about have somebody read it, have somebody look over it. I'll just say the first time I applied for a Curran in 2010, I did not get it. So apply and apply again. I did not get it the second time in 2011, I did get it. And when I went back to read my 2010 application, it was filled with errors. It was just embarrassing, typos, bad, sloppy writing. So do edit and read. And I'll just quickly say that this year, RSVP is piloting a program for graduate students and ECRs, which stands for Early Career Researchers. If you would like to get, not somebody to edit, not proofread your piece, but if you would like somebody to read a draft, please send an email. Kari, if you could put that in the chat, that would be great. Please send an email to communication. Well, you know the address. Please send an email to Mary Grant, who will pair you up with somebody who has volunteered their time, a senior scholar who may have gotten it or may have been on the adjudicating committee. They have nothing to do with the judges for this year, so there's a firewall between them, but they will give it a read. They'll ask questions like, hey, you're being a little vague here. Could you be a little bit more specific? It's coming off that you haven't actually contacted the archives or the kinds of things that the various researcher committee was or other speakers were saying. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I just wanted to quickly say is that you don't have to apply for the full $6,000. Michael is nodding. I mean, if you're in Leeds and you're saying, I want to go to London for 2 weeks, that's not $6,000. So, we get lots of applications for $2,000. Again, be realistic, and that's okay. You can apply for less than the 6,000.
Just a quick follow-up.
Can I ask something?
I'm sorry, just very quickly. Sometimes that actually helps if it's a modest project, right? Because we only have $30,000, right? So if we have some smaller ones, we can do more people. So sorry.
Thank you.
Given the state of the market right now, I would love to know the dollar is not as stable as maybe it's been in the past. So I'm wondering how much sort of building in a wiggle room do you all anticipate, or how should we think about that since inflation keeps inflating?
I think if I understand your question, Bethany, I think I can quickly answer this. We don't require receipts. So if you sort of say, I need to fly from, Paris to, or I don't know, take the train from Paris to London, or I need to fly from, Seattle to London, ballpark $800. I mean, we're ballparking these things when you're applying, because if you're applying now and you're planning to go in the summer, look up summer rates, and so you're ballparking some of that. But if you get a grant for $4,500, you get $4,500. You don't have to send us receipts.
I think part of that question also may be if you're looking at conversion, if you're spending the money in pounds or euros, um, how you do your budget. So how much does that $6,000 equate to in euros or in? So I don't know if the panel or Prithi wants to add to that. One of the things that I've had with applications is that you take a sort of a bank sort of index of at the moment the current rate is X and then do an equivalent conversion. I don't know what other people, what advice would you give, Prithi? Would you say that's a good idea if you're looking for the money in euros but the awards in dollars? Jim's nodding.
Sorry, I was reading the, yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I take your point, Bethany, that the dollar is
I
shifting.
mean,
You know, it's always the case that, you know, so I think, again, you ballpark it. I mean, I don't think the dollar to the euro is going to go up, you know, 300% between now and next summer. I could be wrong. I often am. But I'm just sort of, you know, it's gonna shift, you know, 25%, not 200%. So
Thank you. We've got a question in the chat, which I'm keen that we have time for as well, from Outsider Art. Is narrative preferred over bullet points in describing the project? How would you organise the actual presentation of the narrative? Jim, did you want to come in?
Well, this is one probably for Michael, but I liked Candice's advice earlier, which was to use the suggested structure of in the guidelines to structure your application. And I'm looking back at my two proposals. I did that for the first one, and then unaccountably didn't for the second one. So it shows that maybe it doesn't matter that much, but I think it was really good advice. So use, you know, it asks for four things, right? So use those four things as subheadings to structure the application letter, the narrative account. I think that's really, really helpful.
Michael, did you want to add anything?
Sure, I would just say, yeah, narrative full sentences strongly preferred over bullet points because part of this is what the end product of most of these is a written work, right? So you are not only demonstrating that you've done your work, you're also demonstrating your skill as a wordsmith, right? Which is not inconsequential. So you want absolutely full sentences, write it nicely, clean, powerfully, as strong as you can, clearly.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Candace, can I just address Candace's question? A comment just
Yeah.
now that there is. So based on the advice of last year's committee and maybe previous year's committees too, we have this new cycle requests a itemized budget. So it lays them out in we haven't done this year, and maybe we will next year if the committee comes back to us now this, but the Willison has an actual form that they have you fill out. We just sort of say an itemized budget that includes this, and this, for instance. So yes.
And I think Alison said sometimes tables can work well, especially for things like budget or timeline, because it helps to highlight that and sort of bring that to the attention of the panel as well. So that was really helpful. Thanks, Alison. Okay, any other questions or comments or observations from people? Again, if people want to put them in the chat, then feel free. Okay, that's fine. I think perhaps one of the questions that I'd ask as well, which is quite interesting. Go on, Alison, I'll let you.
Oh, thank you. It was just a bit of a follow-up about the table suggestion and thinking about the wider principle here. So when you're writing a grant, things changed for me in my career a couple of decades ago when somebody told me, just make it really easy for the committee to give it to you. Right, so be very specific, give as much detail as possible, as you've been saying already, show that you've done the work, and rhetorically be convincing. And one of the major tricks about being rhetorically convincing is to structure your grant application according to the guidelines. And again, this was mentioned before, but I can't stress how important that is. So use subheadings, directly cut and paste from the guidelines. Use language of the guidelines too. So if it's asking for deliverables, use that phrase. You might want to use some synonyms too, but like speak directly to what the committee is going to be evaluating you on. And so I like little tables for being really clear about budgets, for example, and being really clear about timeline, but just make it super, super easy for a committee. And the way to test that is to get a friend to read it who's also looked at the guidelines too and who can give you honest advice.
That's great. Thanks, Alison. Does anybody want to pick up on that off our panel?
Think I at my reader's suggestion, I mean I'm in an English department, and so it's all about narrative, and it's it's just long flowy sentences, and I always have to kind of pull back and be more kind of concise and straightforward in my language. And so again, at my reader's suggestion, I incorporated bullet points, especially in addressing, I think Claire, maybe you mentioned it too, is once you have those research questions, the research question is a perfect opportunity to like boom that in a in bullet form. These are my questions. This is what I'm going to do. And it also, that kind of blend, again, this is going way, way back early in my career, was someone said, make it easy on the eyes of of the reviewers. That, I mean, you have a limit, you have a page limit, and you want to build in some white space every now and again, just to help the readers out. And then I'll just say one more thing. This last go round, again, I always use every jot and tittle of space I'm allowed. I take it. If there's a 3-page limit, I'm right at the end of three pages. And when I had done that, when I tried to upload it in PDF form, it took me over the page limit. Like I had been working in Word, and when it went to PDF, it was longer. And I had a frantic conversation with Mary trying to, to get it in the limit. And so building in the time for that kind of emergency situation is maybe another tip.
If you don't use the Word convert to PDF function, but you use the print to PDF function, that does not happen. However, the PDF that you make, if it has hyperlinks built into it, will not necessarily be continued to be hyperlinked. I have also learned this the hard way. So if you have URLs as URLs, they will transpose. But if you have words that you have hyperlinked to save space because you try to look like you're a digital native who maybe understands how technology works, that is where, because Word has a thing where you can be like, convert to make it be all happy, but that messes up your margins. You're not crazy, but that's a workaround. Just for fun.
So leave
Sorry.
time for editing seems to be the sort of point that comes from both of those. Jim, Michael, did you want to add anything further on that?
Well, just to say that we provide the evaluation criteria for this grant. So we say what we're looking for. So, use the guidelines to structure your application, but just bear in mind that there are 5 different things that we're going to rank this against, or evaluate it against at least. So make sure you hit those, and use the language in the evaluation criteria as well to show that you're doing those things. I wanted to ask Michael about the role the evaluation letter, the recommenders letter plays. If you could just elaborate a bit on that, because some people might be thinking about who to approach and who to ask. And I've written some for people in the past, and I often thought it's been useful for me to write it because I'm quite inward with periodical studies, but also this funding scheme as well. So I know the sorts of things to draw out. But what are Michael, any thoughts about that?
Sure. I think the most significant thing that the writer can do is demonstrate the need in the field, right? Remember that second criteria. So it needs to show that there's a need for this research, right? That someone, especially, not everyone knows a senior scholar, right? But if you know someone who's well versed in the field, right? that knows the state of the field, and they can say that yeah, there's clearly, based on my experience, there's clearly a need for this, and this project is going to fill that hole. Now, again, not everyone knows somebody like that. So another potential letter writer would be someone who you've worked with before, who knows your work, who knows you can do this work in this time period, right? Someone who's basically, this person has a proven record, they've gotten this stuff done before, they're not going to waste the money, you know, they're gonna get it done. So there's the two probably most useful sorts of letter writers, I would say.
I think one of the other things that I'd suggest, which I've found really interesting, is if you go onto the RSVP website and you have a look at previous winners, there's also reports there that people have written. One of the sort of, I don't think it's a recommendation, I think it's a condition, is that you sort of write a report at the end of your period about how your fellowship went, what you spent it on and things like that, and how things went, you know, if there's issues of time, challenges and things that came up. So some of those reports might be really useful to have a look at. Jim was talking about the language of the application and using the language and the guidelines, but I'd also recommend having a look at some of those reports as well, because there's some really good advice in there about how they've sort of gone from application to success to actually doing the work. So they might be quite a useful read for people as well. Have we got anything else in the chat? Thanks to Lena, who's had to leave. Generally, letter writers don't mind being prompted about what to address either. So I suppose that would depend on the relationship that you've got with the person that you're asking to write that recommendation for you, how you outline your project to them and what it is that you want them to reinforce, perhaps. Okay, has anybody else got any other questions? I think we've had quite a rich discussion today. I think the sort of doing 5-minute presentations and then going straight into the questions has meant that we can cover quite a lot. Jim?
Is it worth just saying a bit about the number of applications we characteristically get? We've said about the number of awards that we award, right? Because we've got that $30,000 bucket to draw from, and that usually gets like 5 to 8 awards. I think we awarded 10 this year, did we?
Yeah. Yeah.
So and can we say how many applications we get, kind of on average? Is that appropriate? Because I'm looking for nods from Prithvi and Alison here.
I saw Michael looking at his. Michael, did you want to speak to you?
I was trying to find my email, find my list, but I think it's close to. I think it's over 25. I think. So it's between 25 and 30.
Yeah, last year in particular was a pretty bumper crop. I think it was 28 to be precise. But you know, different years, COVID years, there were many fewer just because it was COVID and this is a travel grant, people were not traveling. But I think we gave out 8 last year, Michael. So it's 5 to 8. I don't think we've ever given out 10. I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me. Sorry, Jim.
I think it was Alison who said that at the beginning. So excuse me if Alison and I were wrong with that.
No, maybe, you know what, we can pull it. But so again, let's say 30 and 8. I don't know what the math on that is, about a third. So as Michael said, it is very competitive. And I think to Bethany's point earlier about, you know, I mean, it's getting increasingly competitive as sources, other support sort of dries up.
My gloss on that success rate is that it's competitive, but it's still pretty good. So it's competitive enough that you have to think carefully about your application and what you write, but it's a lot better than a lot of other funding schemes that are out there. And as you said, Prithvi, if you don't get it one year, keep applying, because with those kinds of odds, right, if you have 30%, you've got 1 in 3 chance or whatever, you keep going, it might come round eventually. So see it as a process and don't be disheartened if you don't get it one year.
And can I also just say one thing, and here just to applaud people like Michael and others who have served on committees, including Jim. It's a lot of work, but one of the things I've asked as president and vice president of the committees is just give us some feedback, and I will share. If you didn't get it, I will share the committee feedback. And sometimes it's only 1 or 2 sentences. But so if you don't get it, use that feedback and apply again.
Thank you, Jim. Did you want to come in, or was it Michael? No?
It was me, but Pretty said exactly what I was going to say. Read the feedback, and it doesn't mean your project's no good. It doesn't mean you need to change gears. You can come back with the exact same project, just a little sharper, a little with some fine tuning, and get it.
Kari's put the links in both for the report that I mentioned earlier and also for the 10 fellowships that were given in 2025. So those links are all in the chat for you off Kari.
Yeah, and you can look down in like previous years, whenever there's a link that's a link to the report that the people save, like here's what we did and here's what I found or whatever. I found when I've put it together, sometimes having that sort of as an idea of what people are doing can be helpful, or what kinds of things they're looking for can be helpful when you're trying to craft your own narrative of like, well, I have this idea, I want to go look at this periodical, but like, what do I do? I don't know. I find the reports helpful to read and also as fun to see what people are doing, but that's another place that you can look for help.
That's great. Thanks, Kari. We've got around about 10 minutes left, although I'm aware that we've had probably a longer discussion than we may normally have on a sort of conventional panel like this. As any other questions or comments from people? I think we're moving towards that beginning of the day, end of the day. Alison?
Thank you. There's one more thing I wanted to mention. I mean, I've had lots of grants, but I've also had lots of grants rejected. And I was trying to think as I was listening to the discussion, what do I wish that I knew before I wrote a grant that was rejected? And one of the ones that was rejected was an RSVP grant, actually, a long time ago. And it was because that one thing that underpinned the whole grant, I didn't explain why it was important, because I had assumed it was obvious. I won't say what that was, it's a bit embarrassing, but I just assumed, of course, you guys would know the value of this. So I explained the importance of other bits of the grant, but not the fundamental principle underlying why I wanted the money. So I would just advise prospective applicants to think degrees of scale, both in terms of the particulars of the project, being specific, making it feasible, having a great plan, but also to think about the conceptual underpinning of what you want to do. And don't just assume people will immediately see why it needs to be funded, to explain it.
Thanks, Alison. That's helpful. Prithvi?
I think Candace wants to say something, so I'll go after
All right,
Candace.
okay.
Oh, I was just going to say that grant applications are a genre unto themselves. And the more you do it, the more you learn how to kind of tease out, what kind of language, what kind of structure, the kind of clarity that you need. And so, I mean, yes, I've received, but as Alison said, I've had a whole lot more no's than yeses. And you just have to just keep putting it out there, keep putting it out there. If you grow a thick skin, take the feedback and just keep plowing through. You have to do the work anyway. You're committed to the project, you're passionate about it, and you're going to do it. So just full steam ahead.
Thanks, Candace. I think that's what Alison was saying as well, that, regardless of where you're up to on your sort of research career path, whether you're sort of postgraduate, someone that's very early career, don't sort of think, well, I can't apply for it because someone like X has got one. We really want to see sort of postgrads as well and postdocs applying for these current fellowships. Prithvi?
I just wanted to say, this is just to underscore something that both Michael and Jim already said, but when you're applying, make it clear that you are studying periodicals as object of study. I mean, that is, I couldn't, and maybe, I don't know, Alison, if that was the obvious thing you didn't say in yours, I don't know if that was it, but again, it's not uncommon for in various different RSVP applications that people will sort of say, well, I want to study this thing by George Eliot that appeared in a periodical. So obviously RSVP, but that's not that's periodical. How do the language we have is periodicals is object of study as opposed to resources for something else, right? Resources for something else is, hey, I want to study food writing in the 19th century, and these sets of articles appeared in periodicals, and now I'm going to do a deep content analysis of what they say, not that they appeared in periodicals and that their serialization made an effective difference to how they were consumed or produced or whatever, right? So think in terms of foregrounding the periodical and the serialization than what we, particularly if you're a literary scholar, as literary scholars do, is that, as Michael said, content analysis only. So I think that would be this thing that I know can be hard, particularly if you're coming from a literature department, to think about form rather than content only.
Jim?
I just wanted to mention what I think makes the Curran Fellowships distinctive. And for me, it's two things. It's the focus on research. They're designed to get people into libraries doing primary research. And this is something very important for Eileen Curran, whose bequest we use to provide these. But it's also that they're open to anybody. That we don't, it's not just people attached to institutions. Anybody can apply for a Curran Fellowship, and everybody has to prove they're able to do the research, right? Feasibility is one of the criteria we assess under, but they're open to everyone because we want to get people into the archives, and we recognize that people have all kinds of different relationships with academic institutions or none at all.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're coming into the last few minutes now. I think we've had a really thorough discussion today. It's been good how people have reinforced some of the same points in different ways, different examples. Did anyone on our panel want to add anything further to our discussion today? Jim? No? Michael? Okay, I think...
Just everyone applying, good luck. Hope this was helpful.
Yeah, we have a list of all your names now. We want applications off everybody. That would be really good. Thanks ever so much for your time. Alison, as our chair of the digital committee, what's our next event now? I've lost track of where we're up to. We have a whole series of wonderful things planned coming up over the next academic year. And what was our next one?
I'm hoping that Kari can jump in and tell me because I've forgotten the date. But we have the outgoing Curran index editors are talking about the importance of dailies. I'm busking a bit while I hope Kari looks it up. I'm talking about the importance of dailies and doing macro research from the Curran index to model research. And Kari, I'm hoping you can...
October 17th.
Thanks.
Fantastic.
October the 17th. Yeah,
coming to a website near you,
hopefully
hopefully in the next week. So coming to a website near you. Watch our socials. It'll be out.
Fantastic. Thanks everybody so much, and rounds of applause to our panel. Thank you very much for your time. And as Michael said, good luck with your applications. If you need anything, have any questions, do just reach out. And if anyone on the panel, anyone on the committee can help, then we are glad to be there for you. So thank you.